Wandering along the trade road, the morning mist still enveloped the landscape. I spotted a figure in the distance, a farmer by the looks of him, his cautious stride speaking volumes about the wilderness that bordered his lands, a place frequented by raiding bands of horse-lord warriors. Dressed in my usual travelling attire, a dark tunic and trousers, a blue cape, and a leather chest piece adorned with 3 large ruby gems, I approached the farmer, my staff and heavy journal strapped to my waist. "Good morning," I said, offering a respectful nod as I greeted him in what I hoped was old Kara Tur dialect. The farmer looked me over, his eyes narrowed slightly as he assessed the situation. He returned my nod but remained cautious, his wariness understandable. Once I could see he understood the language, I decided to share a bit about myself and my travels in a non-intrusive manner, hoping to ease his apprehension. "I've wandered through many lands and seen countless wonders," I remarked, opening my heavy journal to reveal sketches and notes from my journeys. The farmer glanced at the journal briefly, his interest piqued but his guard still up. I could see as he tried to read the text, but in Kara Tur they used the draconic alphabet to record their language. Looking over the pages, he nodded politely, his demeanour cautious but respectful. Recalling the Badin tea ritual I learned while exploring the Anarok Desert, I suggested we stop and share a pot of tea together, and the farmer nodded. So I set up a simple tea set on the flat rock by the side of the road, brewed the tea with care, and looked at every illustration and map in my journal together. Handing him a cup, I offered a silent toast to whatever gods happened to be watching, and we settled down to a nice chat. Curious about the local area and its inhabitants, I asked about any recent tales or legends, and his responses were brief but informative, revealing snippets of local lore and cautionary tales that shed light on the challenges of living on the borderlands. It seemed every story he told involved the loss of some relative, friend, or well-regarded person, but still, I sensed that indomitable human spirit. Here was a man who had fought to the death to defend his family and home on more than one occasion. He was weathered not just from years working in the hot eastern sun, but his bronzed skin, wide facial features, and carefully groomed black hair all identified him as a member of the Shou people, one of the oldest branches of many human empires. He had occupied the lands of Kara Tur for tens of thousands of years. As we finished our tea and bid farewell, the farmer's demeanour remained cautious but not unfriendly, his eyes still wary but no longer suspicious of me, rather just back to carefully watching his environment. It was a good start, I felt. As I travelled across Kara Tur, I was inside the nation of Shaolong, the largest and most powerful empire in Kara Tur. The whole time, I did hear a lot about the island nation of Wa, and that was where the sage I met was from, and she summoned the Arcanoloth demon that instructed me on the magic of Kara Tur later, but we're not going to be talking about that story. One thing is evident when you travel into Shaolong and take the time to appreciate the landscape. The people who have worked the land for generations have done so under the influence of those who know about the weave and the flow of natural energies. The townships blend into the natural landscape. The fields and the roads, the trade centres and government temples are all arranged around ley lines and ancient sacred sites. Of particular interest was the migration of immortal Nagas to this region of the continent long ago, in the days of the Empire of Scales. They remained free from the pestering of the Yuan-Ti and the Batraki Empire that rose up after the fall of the Sarok who created them, the Sauroid rulers of the serpent folk and scaly kind. There are rumours that many spirit Nagas and doppelgangers are operating behind the scenes in some of the most ancient institutions of arcane studies. Perhaps that explains the Shaolong love of wavy lines and stepped fields of rich and vibrant, hardy vegetables. Trade all across Kara Tur ensures that fresh, exotic fruit is much more commonly available than in the Forgotten Realms region, even without the advantage of an inland sea to speed along delicate trade goods and produce. The Shaolong people once had a great brick wall all along the border with the desert I appeared to walk out of that misty morning, but it's gone now. Miraculously, some great dragon spirit was trapped inside it, and it got free 100 years ago, but my details on that are a bit sketchy. I did see a lot of brick walls and buildings, so perhaps the local people just repurposed the ruined wall. They seem very practical regarding that sort of thing. You can't just leave ruins and valuable bricks lying around the place. The Shou people have dwelled in the east for a very long time, and their culture is quite different from the lands to the west. First, they live in a world where heaven, the celestial empire, is a vast mirror of the empire of Shaolong, with its own bureaucracy, government, and emperor, holding spiritual authority over all of Kara Tur. This situation has influenced their entire culture and all subsequent religions and teachings that have come after. So even if a person there doesn't dedicate their life to any particular faith, they all basically know that heaven is real and they need to prepare themselves for eventually ending up in the afterlife. Religions are quite different. There are three main belief groups: the Way, the Path of Enlightenment, and the Veneration of the Nine Immortals. The teachings of the Way, now see if this sounds familiar, say that there are no separate forces of good, evil, chaos, and law, that only interconnected and interrelated forces that followers of the Way can shape. Its followers are divided into the dark way and a light way. And yes, it operates and sounds very much like the Force from Star Wars, but with yin-yang symbols, and most who follow the Way are neutral in their outlook rather than going to extremes in either dark or light actions. After all, it's supposed to be about peace, harmony, and the eternal order after all. Interestingly, more of the wujin, the arcane spellcasters of Kara Tur, practice the Way than the shukenja, the mostly divine spellcasters. But wujins are not like the trained wizards of the Western realms. They don't attend wizard schools or academies, and they have to seek out a wujin and learn from them, figuring out a lot of their magic use on their own. So they're a bit sorcerer, a bit wizard, a bit druid, and a bit monk. The followers of the Way are primarily responsible for the research and spreading of mystical knowledge in general, but they will often be the wujin who are either more open to sharing their knowledge or taking knowledge being jealously guarded by others for their own power and reputation. Both actions in the Way will, while opposed ethically, still spread knowledge around, so they're both effective in spreading magical knowledge. Magic in Shaolong is reviewed through the lens of traditional and ritual, with a focus on elemental magic, divination, and the manipulation of energy flows. The Shukenja, the divine spellcasters, and the Wujin, the arcane spellcasters, are revered for their abilities and often serve important roles within the imperial court and religious institutions, or they take the role of shamans and wise people or traveling sages throughout the lands of Kara Tur. The Shao people practice a blend of ancestor veneration, nature worship, and philosophical traditions that emphasize harmony with the universe. To them, the universe exists in a perfect and eternal balance. As long as everyone follows the rules and respects traditions, things will continue to run smoothly, or at least not get any more broken. So for your average Shao person, the universe and the celestial court is indifferent. It's a system, a machine. They are cogs in that machine. Or they're vital components that are destined to perform some task in their life, depending on your level of pessimism. But the whole point of Shaolong is that the empire is eternal. It certainly is doing well. So far it's about 3,000 years old, and there have been over 70 emperors, and the troubles with bordering islands and a few other smaller nations have not been very serious lately, so things look as stable as always in Shaolong, which is just the way they like it. The official state religion of Shaolong is the Path of Enlightenment, or the True Path. It's a codex of behaviors created by the Celestial Emperor in order that the mortal world and the celestial heaven mirror one another, maintaining order and the slow, eternal quest for attaining perfection. Basically, it's the 10 Commandments and the 9 cardinal virtues, the attainment of a good heavenly credit rating on your right deeds and correct actions meter. So it's more like Eastern Catholicism, except the Pope is actually God and the cardinals are demigods, and everyone knows how to use the 3 seashells. It's religion by state-printed pamphlets, and very much wants everyone to believe that the mortal authorities also carry the authority of the afterlife, so you better stay out of trouble, or you might literally be sentenced to one of their many bespoke hells in the afterlife. I'm not going to go into any great detail about the Shukenja, the divine spellcasters, or the gods of Kara Tur, but I will drop this little bombshell on your lap in case you didn't know this already. And I guarantee you probably didn't. Kara Tur is not governed by the overgod known as Ao. It is governed by another overgod entity known as the Celestial Emperor, and it is from that entity that the entire Celestial Empire influences and shapes Kara Tur, its culture, and its divine magic. Even the existence of dragons is governed by the overgod there. But our focus today is the wujin and the arcane traditions and practices of modern Kara Tur. Also, how you can include these concepts easily into your game to represent that Kara Tur and the Empire of Shaolong is not on the other side of the world, a completely unknown land ignored by the West. Far from it. Kara Tur trades with the West, and the people from there live in the West and share their culture. In some places, it blends to make a whole new culture, and you get some pretty interesting player character options if you really embrace the idea. Yes, Kara Tur is real and should form a part of the overall vibe of Toril. Of course, one way to explore Kara Tur culture in your game is to create and run characters from there. So cliche examples include the wujin wanderer, a traveller who has sought out ancient mentors to learn the ways of elemental magic, blending sorcery, wizardry, and druidic traditions. You could play an imperial agent, a member of the imperial bureaucracy trained in diplomacy, espionage, and martial arts, serving as a loyal servant to the celestial emperor. Or you could play a legitimate cultural ambassador who just has studied foreign cultures and serves as a bridge between Shaolong and the Western realms, promoting continued peace, cooperation, and most importantly, trade. Otherwise, how could you afford to be there? A mystical merchant who sells exotic goods from the Far East is another great option. Just the idea that your character could have this serious arsenal of magic items to trade or sale, along with strange food, drinks, and weird animals or plants from their homeland, and basically see adventuring as a way to refresh their trade inventory so they can sell that stuff back home. You also have the traveling guide, the seer, the healer, and the channel of divine wisdom and celestial insight, the Shukenja, who protects their communities but when they must, but also seeks out new wisdom, experiences, and chances to turn people towards the path of enlightenment. And I think they give out little scrolls that contain the rules for right living and espouse the importance of your mortal life as a chance to earn a better afterlife. I'd suggest a few alterations you could make to existing 5th edition classes to give them some traits reflecting a different cultural origin. So in the West, spellcasters look at the invisible energy flows and interactions of the cosmos, and they give it a persona and venerate it as a god. But in the end, the attitude towards the weave through their history has been an exploitive one, because their magical traditions were manipulated by powerful and immortal ancient beings from long-lost civilizations, and the oldest being mighty primordial beings that have departed the prime material plane and now reside in upper dimensions where they can live in multiple alternate realities at the same time. Oh, and they sealed off the path behind them, so mortal beings in the D&D multiverse can't attain a state of being powerful enough to alter multiple universes at the same time, and can never achieve a state where they can detect and track the activities of the primordials, because they're basically needles in a haystack of infinite alternate realities, and in return, the primordials can see absolutely everything going on, including alternate courses of events, which are real locations they can travel and interact with. So in Dungeons & Dragons cosmology, the primordials never really did stop creating, playing, and destroying universes. They just made it so that none of their toys could ever really hurt them. They're running their holodeck with the safety protocols switched on, so to speak. In the East, the invisible flows of energy, wind, heat, water, electromagnetic currents, migrations, eclipses, conjunctions, powerful events in the creation or destruction of life, strongly emotive events or objects, and the normal day-to-day activity and patterns of all living things is not just seen as just the weave, this thing to be used like fuel that can take care of and replenish itself. Instead, the Eastern spellcasters see all these energy flows as separate things that must exist and support each other in harmony. Thus, their rituals can involve things like altering the landscape and building structures designed to direct and amplify the flow of energy in order to siphon some of that flow to power magical enchantments. Eastern magic has a far more nuanced and subtle approach to using all available resources, and the spellcasters tend to think of themselves as just as much a component and energy source as anything else. So the wujin are known to have many weird habits, dietary restrictions, and odd behaviors which they firmly believe purifies them enough to create certain types of magic or reach higher levels of magical power, and it seems to work. After parting ways from the farmer, I headed deeper into Shaolong, where I encountered a wujin named Lian, a man of impressive stature with a serene demeanor. We met at a marketplace, both looking over some curious items the villagers said they had retrieved from the local town. Liam's appearance was striking, with long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and deep-set eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. His robes were adorned with intricate patterns representing the elements, a good indicator that he had mastery over elemental magic. Lian's voice was calm and measured as he spoke of his travels and experiences. He shared stories of his encounters with spirits adventures in ancient temples, and studies under wise mentors' guidance. His knowledge of the arcane was vast, encompassing divination, demonology, and the manipulation of natural energies. What struck me most about Lian was his unique approach to magic. Unlike traditional spellcasters, Western ones, Lian drew power directly from the world around him, tapping into ley lines and ancient sacred sites to amplify his abilities. He could also tap into his own energy, describing his efforts to purify and strengthen his body as simply improving the universal spell component himself. He was actually aware of signs and portents in the world around him, which was much like the habits of a cleric, constantly looking for signs from their gods. And as I spent more time with the wujin, it became evident that his abilities were far from ordinary. His mastery over elemental magic was not just a skill, but a way of life, deeply ingrained into every aspect of his being. His practices, while subtle, were a testament to the unique traits and abilities that set the wujin apart from other spellcasters. They're self-taught, jack of all trades, but also incorporate ancient traditions. The wujin's approach to magic is deeply ritualistic, focusing on the manipulation of natural energies and the elemental forces that he said were just as alive as you or I, and that elemental creatures should be shown respect in any form they take, as they are part of a whole and are connected in a delicate balance of eternal order, much too vast for little mortal minds to fathom. Unlike traditional wizards who memorize spells from tomes and scrolls, the wujin draw power directly from the world around them, tapping into ley lines and ancient sacred sites to amplify their abilities, and they can cast spells from memory at will. His expertise in divination was remarkable, allowing him to peer into the future and unravel mysteries of the unknown. He often used this skill to seek guidance from the spirit world, consulting ancestral spirits and elemental guardians for wisdom and insight, even while shopping in a marketplace. Demonology was another area of expertise. We talked excitedly about that. For the wujin, this approach was far from dark and malevolent, practices that are often associated with the summoning of demons. Instead, he saw demons as powerful entities that could be bound and controlled through arcane rituals to be used to protect against malevolent forces or to gain forbidden knowledge. Lian's understanding of the spirit world was extensive, allowing him to communicate with and manipulate spirits to aid his endeavors. He showed me that by simply burning the ritual joss paper in its many different forms, being folded shapes of animals and objects or to illustrations of equipment, and he also described a paper currency they use instead of silver coins and trade bars, which I became familiar with, all of which is burned in simple rituals, and the smoke goes up and manifests actual items, creatures and wealth within the ethereal and to a limited extent within the astral planes. Also, it was possible for Lian to burn tiny illustrations of a sword, then a moment later, the thing appeared in his hand, as real as can be. In addition to his magical prowess, Lian possessed a deep knowledge of the natural world. He has a keen eye for detail, and that he ensured never missed an opportunity to harness the vast energies of the world around him, gathering rare herbs and ingredients essentials for his rituals. And what rituals! I thought I had a fairly good grasp on ritual magic, but Liam's mastery over ritual casting was unparalleled, allowing him to apply meta-magic feats and effects to his spells in ways that defied my Western conventional understanding. And as he performed the rituals, I could see him manipulating the weave of magic, bending the very fabric of reality to his will, but being super careful not to cause any lasting disruption or damage. And despite his formidable abilities, Lian remained humble and focused. His dedication to the craft was evident in everything that he did, every gesture, every incantation, every ritual he performed. But also, he was a member of the community. As we parted ways, Liam's parting words resonated with me. He said that the West is the frontier of Kara Tur, and civilization was coming. Hopefully before another empire falls, to which I replied, "What empire?" And he just said, "Exactly. Nature doesn't like unfilled seats at the table. And if we don't take control of the whole continent, we will lose the West. You must know this, great sage." I simply nodded, and we carried on with our lives. My name is AJ Pickett. Thanks for joining me. If you're interested in D&D lore, learning about the Forgotten Realms and the Dungeons & Dragons multiverse, including a massive archive of monster ecology videos, please subscribe to the channel and consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you for liking the video, and as always, I'll be back with more for you very soon.